everyone, me again. Welcome back to xameliax. So today we're going to be talking about BBT charting, basal body temperature tracking, and how you can use it to find out a little bit more about you and your cycle. For those of you who are new, hi, my name's Amelia. I'm a full-time content creator from the Midlands here in the UK, and I'm on a bit of a mission to destigmatise topics around menstruation, periods, cycles, hormones, and just general mental health. So if you are on board with that, click subscribe, grab a cup of tea, sit down, and let's learn about our BBT tracking. I have been BBT tracking for the last 2 years after I decided to come off the pill, having been on it for over 10 years. It was a journey. I've done a couple of videos on my experience, so I'll leave the links to those down below if you fancy checking that out, if you're in the same position. It has been the best journey I've decided to go on for my body, but I've done a lot of learning, so check out those videos down below. After being on the pill for 10 years and not having a period, I didn't know anything about my cycle. I didn't know how long they were. I didn't know if they were regular, irregular. I also didn't know if the pill had been masking any underlying problems or hormonal imbalances for me, such as PCOS or endometriosis. So I started looking into BBT tracking to give me a little bit more information about my cycle and just to generally check that things were working okay in there after such a long time of artificial hormones. So what is BBT tracking and what can it be used for? So if you didn't know, your temperature actually changes depending on what stage of your cycle you are in. So on average, we tend to run a little bit lower at the first end of our cycle, so from day one of your period up until ovulation, and then our temperatures rise slightly after ovulation and stay high until either conception happens or our periods start and they drop again. And so the cycle goes like that every single month. So by taking your temperature each day and noting the changes of these into a chart, like plotting it into a graph, you can see whereabouts you are in your cycle. You can also pinpoint your ovulation date and your fertile window, and it also gives you a bit of a heads up as to whether your period is on the way, or if you are trying to conceive, whether you are pregnant. Our temperatures tend to follow what they call a biphasic pattern, which is where it's a little bit lower at the first half, higher in the second. So after you've been tracking your temperatures for a few months, you'll figure out your personal patterns, where that happens for you at different points in your cycle, and it also can give you a little bit of an indication if there's any hormonal imbalances, if maybe ovulation isn't happening the way it should do, and it gives you something to talk to your GP about and also investigate a little bit further. So if you're trying to conceive, BBT tracking is great for helping you to pinpoint when your ovulation happens. It doesn't happen on day 14 strictly for everybody. It can change depending on you and your cycle, how long your cycles are, different factors that have gone on during the month. So if you're trying to conceive, that is a really important date to pinpoint, and you can do that with BBT tracking. So if you're looking to do that, essentially your temperatures will have a sharp dip just before ovulation and then a sharp rise after ovulation, and that kind of gives you an idea of when it's happening for you, so you can time everything around that, shall we say. And while it can be used for conception, it can also be used for contraception. A lot of people just use BBT tracking as their main form of contraception because if you know your fertile window, you can either abstain from having sex during that time or use an extra backup in the bedroom to make sure that no babies are made. Because contrary to what we were taught in school, just looking at a penis does not get you pregnant, okay? There's only a few days in the month where that can happen, and BBT charting can help you figure out when that is. Contraception and conception aside, BBT charting is just a really great way for you to get more information on what your body is doing. It can also give you a heads up as to when your period might be starting, because you will notice your temperatures start to drop again just before that happens. Or of course, if you have become pregnant, they may rise a little bit more or just stay high. So again, more information, the better. And of course, if you notice that the patterns of your cycle aren't necessarily matching what they should be doing on a traditional BBT chart, you can always take that information in and have a chat to your GP about any hormonal imbalances that might be going on. It all sounds great, but how do you actually do it? Well, step one is to get yourself a thermometer. There are so many different thermometers out there. Some of them are very pricey and very fancy with Bluetooth that connects to an app and automatically records things for you. There's also some that are targeted at people who are trying to conceive, so the prices on those are ridiculously expensive. All you really need is a thermometer that reads reads to 2 decimal places, because while the temperature changes and fluctuations that happen are quite small within a couple of decimal places, they're quite significant at the same time. So you need to make sure that the thermometer you are using is very accurate. I've had this one since I started tracking 2 years ago, and I haven't changed the battery once. So I will leave a link to this one down below. I think it was about £8. It served me well. Once you've got your thermometer, you need to be taking your temperature at the same time every single day before you do anything else. For me personally, I try to take mine around 8 o'clock every single day, because that kind of suits when I wake up during the week and also at the weekends. I am not a morning person, but as long as I take my temperature between 7:30 and 8:30, so 30 minutes either side of my regular time, obviously aiming for 8 o'clock where possible, it tends to give me a really accurate reading. But what is important is that you do this before you do anything else in the morning. So quite literally, alarm goes off, eyes open, roll over, turn off your alarm, grab your thermometer, pop it in, and if you're anything like me, just sit there like that for 90 seconds while your brain is trying to wake up and while this is taking your temperature. Then I just record my temperature in my period tracking app. At the moment I'm using Flow. I really like it. I like the way it all looks. It's very easy to use. So I just put my temperature in that, but you can use any of the period trackers that you're using, or you can just write it down in your notes app, whatever you want to do, and keep track of the changes throughout the month. But you really do need to make sure that it is the first thing you do in the morning, before you even sit up, before you go to the toilet, before you obviously have a cup of tea, because as soon as you start to move, your body temperature rises slightly and you're not going to get that accurate reading. It can be a little bit tricky at times, because if you have broken sleep, or if you get up in the middle of the night a couple of times and go for a wee, something wakes you up, it can all affect your temperature. Basically, you need a good solid 4 hours of sleep before you take your temperature in order to get that correct reading. I was doing this for quite a while before I realised that you really do have to do this as the first thing when you wake up in the morning. I was sort of sitting up, I was having a sip of my tea and being like, oh damn, I've got to take my temperature, putting it in, and wondering why my charts were all over the place. But once I got into the habit of doing this, and it really does become second nature, roll over, turn your alarm off, put your thermometer in, sorted. It's actually really, really easy. And that really is all that there is to it. It can be such a handy little tool to help you figure out a little bit more about your cycle, make sure everything is going the way you want it to go. I also did an at-home fertility test that tested out all of my hormones and also my ovarian reserve, which is how many eggs you've got left, which was a really great experience if you want to go one step further into finding out a little bit more about your cycle and what's going on in there. I've done a video on that. I will leave the link to that one down below as well. But BBT tracking is a super cheap, super easy way to just get a bit more information about your cycle and what's going on in there. So if you have any questions, I'm not a medical expert. I've just been doing this for 2 years and I've done a lot of research. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comment section down below. If you want to find out more about cycles, hormones, all of that jazz, click subscribe, because I do a lot of these videos and we talk really openly about this, both on here and also on my Instagram at xameliax, so make sure you come over there and follow me. But yeah, if you found this useful, big thumbs up and let me know in the comments section. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again soon. Bye! Happy charting!